Greetings, fifth graders. Today, this week, we're starting a new unit in science, and it's the basics of life, characteristics of living things. So each day, it's not going to be as long of a lesson as we did a couple weeks ago. I'm going to try to keep it a little bit shorter, and you're not going to be taking as many notes that you have to write down. Instead, we're going to be doing a couple different things. I will be attaching to Class Dojo a sheet. So today, this is today's sheet where you'll fill in the blanks, and I'll pretty much tell you when to do that. But we're also going to be writing vocabulary words down. And what I'll try to do at the beginning of each video is have a list of the vocabulary words along with their definition. And you can write those down in your assignment notebook. Now this is key. Write these in your assignment notebook. Where do they go, Junie? In your assignment notebook. Oh, that was a really good answer, Junie. They go in your assignment notebook. And I'd like you to title it like this: Life Science Vocabulary Words, and then put the date. Monday, March. It's not the 7th, it's the 9th. Why did that happen? Monday, March. My 9 isn't working. My 9. Oh, my 9 was broken. And then at the beginning of the video, I will have some definitions for you to write down there. They won't quite be there today. They'll appear in a second. But normally, go ahead and I'll have those definitions up and you write them down in your notebook, okay? We'll get back to the lesson now. So we have basics of life, characteristics of living things. And the big question that we're going to answer today, well, there's two questions. One is, what is an organism? And two, what are characteristics of organisms? So our first definition here is basically, what is an organism? And an organism is basically any living thing, anything that's alive. So it could be a plant, animals, bacteria. If it's alive, it's an organism. But the question is, how do I know if something's alive? What do you think are some possibilities here? Is fire alive? I mean, for a long time, people debated, is fire alive? Because, it eats by burning wood. It breathes. It needs oxygen to burn. It can reproduce. It can cause more fire. Does that make it an organism? Well, we're going to, in a second here, describe what exactly are the characteristics of organisms. So make sure you have this sheet ready. We can write down the definition here. So in here you can write down an organism is any living thing, or you could put down the definition I wrote, which is basically an individual animal, plant, or single cell life form. And then in these four boxes, go ahead and draw an example of a plant and plants and animals, okay? So now we're moving on. We've answered the first question. What is an organism? An organism is a living, anything that's alive. So what are those characteristics? The first characteristic is that organisms are made up of cells. So here's pictures of cells. These are plant cells, individual plant cells. These are animal cells. I believe these are blood cells. And I think this is a single cell organism. Believe it or not, there are organisms made up of just one cell. Human beings are complex. We're made up of trillions and trillions of cells, but there are single cell organisms. And I gave that example of fire before. Is fire an organism? Well, does fire have cells? The answer to that is no. So that would be why we don't classify fire as an organism. It breathes, it eats, it reproduces, but it doesn't have cells. So in this first line here, we would write made of cells. This particular sheet doesn't allow me to type there, so you'll have to write that there, made of cells. The next one, organisms have basic needs. Think about your basic needs. You need water, you need food, you need a place to live, you need to breathe in oxygen or different gases. The reason why we don't say oxygen there is because trees don't need oxygen, they need carbon dioxide. And different organisms breathe in different things. But organisms need water, and they need food to grow, and they need some sort of shelter. The shelter, though, is, I mean, we need homes or places to keep warm and dry. A tree, what kind of shelter does it need? Well, it needs the right conditions. It needs a forest. The bacteria that lives in your stomach, its shelter is basically your stomach. The conditions in your stomach are good for it. So an organism, we can write this here in line 2, has basic needs. So number 1 was made up of cells. Number 2 is has basic needs. And if you want to write what those basic needs are, you can. Food, water, shelter, gases, those are all good things. The third one is they reproduce. They make more of their own kind. That's what reproduce basically means. So here, a pine cone isn't a seed, but it has seeds in it. So how does a pine tree reproduce? It uses its pine cones. And this fruit here, it has seeds there. And this dandelion has all these little seeds here. And of course, here's a dog with a puppy and all those. Those are ways animals reproduce. So we'll go back to here. Number 1 was made of cells. Number 2 is, why am I forgetting number 2 already? Have basic needs. Number 3 is reproduce. And if you haven't guessed, number 4 is grow. Organisms grow. So this plant grew from a seed to a bigger plant, and maybe this will be a tree, a big mighty tree. You grew from a baby, and maybe you're right here or right here. One of these, there might be a fifth one that needs to go right here for a teenager. But organisms grow. So number 4 here is grow. Remember number 3, what was number 3? Reproduce. Number 2 was have basic needs, and number 1 was are made up of cells. The last one is respond to changes. Oh, this is an interesting one. We respond to our senses. And animals have senses too. So you respond to things you see, things you hear. If you hear a loud noise, you're going to turn towards it and look. If you smell something that smells horrible, you're going to try to get away from it. So those are your senses, are stimuli, things that causes you to respond to it. Animals or plants respond to stimuli too. They respond to gravity. If you notice, plant roots grow down and their stems grow up, so that's a reaction to gravity. The roots will grow towards water. That's a reaction to stimuli. And if you have a house plant and you place it to a window, it'll lean towards that window. Those are all responses to a plant's responses to change there. So down here we have respond to changes or respond to stimuli. And then this one is they grow, reproduce, have basic needs. And the last one here is, or the first one here was they are made up of cells. So if we go back and answer our first 2 questions here, what is an organism? An organism is any living thing, anything that's alive, which could be an individual animal, plant, or single-cell life form. And then we have what are the characteristics of organisms. So those are, they're made up of cells, they reproduce, have basic needs, they grow, and respond to changes. So I think what's important here is that you're able to answer these 2 questions, but I'd also say it'd be good to know what the animal and plant stimuli are as well. So I'm also going to have another short video here from YouTube that you can watch that kind of reinforces this. So that's it for today, guys. We'll see you tomorrow.